Okay, welcome everybody to my first Google Hangouts on Air webinar. Today we're going to be talking about Moodle end of year course rollovers. For anybody who wants to join in on Twitter, the hashtag is Moodle rollovers, and my Twitter handle is on this screen as well if anybody wants to get in touch with me after this webinar. So who is this presentation aimed at? So this short webinar is aimed at people who don't have a current rollover procedure or rollover strategy with Moodle. Also aimed at those without the skills or the resources to either hack databases or write web services and have the resources to do those things. And lastly, it's for those looking for a low-cost core solution to a very prominent problem. So what is a Moodle rollover? A Moodle rollover is a process where we prepare Moodle for the next academic term. So this involves creating new courses, backing up existing courses, handling user enrollments, creating groups, and all those things that we do to get ready for a start of a new academic year. So the Moodle admins and monsters will know that this is quite a stressful time of year. This normally takes place around July and August and can take anything from 2 to 4 weeks. It's a long, laborious process of archiving courses, backing up courses, and building new courses, and it takes a considerable amount of time. It's usually done over the summer months, due to the fact this is the quietest time on Moodle when most of the students are away, but it also poses a problem because it's the time of year when most teaching staff are away on holidays also. So before we start, we'll look at building a strategy. So first of all, what are the business objectives? Why are we doing an end of year rollover? Also, how much does an end of year rollover cost in terms of staff time, hardware, additional storage, backups? All these factors must be taken into account. Does it also form part of a wider IT strategy? Does it fall under IT strategy? Is it more of a quality strategy? And also you need to identify which stakeholders need to be involved in the process, whether this is Moodle teams, MIS teams, SAS teams, IT support, perhaps library teams, and the e-learning teams. When we're defining the process, we need to find a method that works best for our organization. How will we identify the rollover courses? Which courses will we be carrying forward in the new term? And which courses will still need access for live students? We also need to consider whether there's going to be any downtime. Are we allowed downtime whilst we perform our rollover strategies? And how much downtime are we allowed? And depending on this, we'll define which method works best for you. So here's what organizations currently do on Moodle. They either clone a new instance of Moodle every year, which takes the existing Moodle server. If it's a virtual server, then this server is then cloned and then renamed Moodle 2015, 2016, etc. And the new Moodle continues into the new academic term. Another option that some people take is to back up the course using the course backups in Moodle, and then simply reset that course ready for the new academic term, whereby it wipes out the enrollments, the user information, but keeps all the course materials, course resources, forums, assignments, etc. intact. And then the third option is cloning existing courses and keeping a live instance, an archive copy of that course on the system as well. Again, these are all different. These all differ depending on the organization, and whichever strategy you choose is dependent on your individual circumstances. So let's take a minute to just look at the advantages and disadvantages of each of these strategies. So if we look at a cloned Moodle, whereby we are cloning the Moodle server, the advantages are quite apparent. We get an exact replica of the current Moodle setup, and it is a live environment that students and staff can still access. And it can be done relatively quickly, particularly on virtual hardware. And it requires little tutor involvement or no tutor involvement at all to do this. It can be done from a pure IT perspective. However, there are many disadvantages that come with this as well. It's another server that you have to source and set up and maintain. It could have a license cost if that's a Windows server. And it also has to tie in with your IT strategies such as backups, disaster recovery. Perhaps it's more space on the SAN, on the network storage. There's lots of factors to take into account when spinning up new Moodle servers. It's also another Moodle site that needs to be upgraded, patched and backed up and maintained and looked after. Another headache for the Moodle administrator. It requires another URL, another web address that students and staff need to be made aware of. And it also requires a server for each year that you do this form of rollover. So in the UK, it's quite common to keep some courses for 3 to 5 years. So often we have a Moodle 1, Moodle 2, and Moodle 3, and then it's possible to cycle through those different servers. It also requires a certain amount of downtime because we're taking a snapshot in time when to close that server, when to spawn it and create a new one. So there can be downtime anywhere between 2 and 5 days. So let's look at the advantages and the disadvantages of backing up a course and using the Moodle reset. The advantages of this procedure, it means it can be done by tutors. So tutors can back up their own courses, or in fact rely on the automatic course backups in Moodle. You then create a single course instance, so there's only one instance of the course running. It can be done ad hoc, which means there doesn't have to be any downtime. It can be done as and when the tutor is ready to perform this action. However, it does come with its disadvantages. The old instance of the course is not live, as we're working from a single instance. So should we need to go back and restore that course, we'd have to restore that zip file, that course backup, somewhere on Moodle to retrieve, say, some student files or some work from the previous year. It's also quite a linear and manual process, and it's done on a course-by-course basis. Also, if backup courses aren't used, they can fall behind the Moodle versions for upgrades. So if you back up your Moodle courses, you've got courses from, say, 3 years ago, and then you try to restore them, but in those 3 years, you may have upgraded Moodle quite significantly, then some of those courses may not restore without any problems. So the third option, and probably my preferred option, is the option to clone a course and then archive the legacy instance. The advantages of this certainly outweigh the disadvantages. The legacy course is archived, yet it's still accessible for both staff and students should it need to be. The new course is populated with existing resources and documents, quizzes, PowerPoints, etc. for the start of term. It only requires one server instance of Moodle, so we don't have to keep multiple instances in different servers running Moodle. There's no downtime, and there's no restore process when access is required to a legacy course. So if you are facing an internal verification or external verification and you need to drop back into a previous course, then you can do this from your existing Moodle site. The disadvantages to this are it's still a linear and manual process, and it makes existing Moodle sites slightly larger, but not as much as you would think, and we'll cover this further on in this webinar. So how do we make it less of a manual and linear process? Well, we can do this by automating the procedure using simple CSV files and using core Moodle functionality. So before we start, it's important to have a checklist. So there's just a few things that you need to be made aware of before you actually start your rollover procedure. You must be able to identify which courses you're indeed rolling over. And it makes much more sense to do this as early on in the process as you can because it's a time-consuming task. It's made easier if you can work closely with your management information team, your student information services, the people that control the enrollments at the college, the university, or the school or organization where you work. And if possible, try export as much of the data from these systems as you can. So if you can script it, or your team can script it indeed, so you can export these files as CSVs, it just reduces the burden and the time it takes in Moodle. Also, something to watch out for is when we are archiving courses, the course folders that we're going to move courses into must already exist before we do this. Moodle will not automatically create your courses. So let's look at the process. It's a 4-step process. Step 1 involves archiving or moving the legacy courses to a new folder on Moodle under a new year. So ideally the previous year, courses 2015, for example. Step 2, we then send a suspend request to the existing users on those courses. So it doesn't unenroll them from the courses, so we keep all their information, all their assignments, and all the gradebook. We just suspend that user from accessing that course so it doesn't show up in their My Moodle page. Step 3, we're then going to create our new courses for the new term, but we're going to pull the existing resources using template codes to populate our new courses. And step 4, the last step, we're going to enroll our new intake of learners onto these new courses. So what I'm going to do now is break these 4 steps down, and we are going to see what's involved on Moodle at each stage. So step 1, we're going to archive the legacy courses. This process involves moving the courses to an archived category on Moodle. And again, the big warning here is the category must already exist on Moodle or this will not work. So on the left-hand side of the screen, you can see my old category structure, science, maths, and English for this example. And on the right-hand side of the screen, you'll see my new category structure. So again, I still have the top-level categories of science, maths, and English, but I've created a new folder called 2015 courses, and in there I've replicated the same category structure of science, maths, and English. And I will be moving all the courses into those subfolders. So to do this, I'll be creating a very simple CSV file. Again, notice the warning at the top, the category must exist. For those not familiar with CSV files, it's well documented on Moodle Docs, but I'll just explain how this CSV file works and what's involved. For those of you who are unfamiliar with CSV files, it stands for comma separated value file. You can create CSV files in spreadsheet applications, Google Docs, Microsoft Excel, and you can also export from most student record systems as CSV files as well. In order to move courses, only 4 fields are actually required. So if we look at the first column, this is the short name of the course to identify this in Moodle. And then we've created a new column called rename. This allows us to rename the short name to something different. So in this case, algebra becomes algebra 2015. The full name remains the same. You can see we're changing the category path. So the category path is now moving to 2015 courses / maths. It's important to put the space before and after that /. And again, if you look at the rest of the CSV file, we'll do the same for statistics. We will rename it statistics 2015, move it to the maths folder, and the same with geometry. In the science courses, we append the 2015 to the short name, and we move those to the science folders, and so on and so forth. So once we have our CSV file saved, we simply upload this to Moodle, and down at the bottom of this screen, you can see it's via site administration, courses, upload courses. And then you should see a screen that looks like this. You can use the file picker to browse to your CSV file, or you can drag and drop your CSV file in that window. If you need any additional help with uploading courses, then the URL to the Moodle Docs is at the bottom of this screen as well. Once you've uploaded this file, you then see a preview, just so you can see if you've named everything correctly and that there are no errors in your CSV file or commas out of place. You can see here that the status is that the course has been renamed, and also we make the assumption at this stage that the courses have been moved into the correct folders as well. After the preview, you'll see an option for various options to import. The only ones I need to draw your attention to here is the upload mode. I've set to only update existing courses, so I only want to change courses that are in my CSV file, and I only want to update with the data that's in the CSV file. It's important though that allow renames is set to yes, so that's the 4th option down. If that's not set to yes, then the courses will not be renamed, and we need them to be renamed for when we create our new courses. So once you're happy with those settings and you've seen the preview, you upload the courses and you will see a result screen like this, which shows that the course has been renamed and the course has been updated and moved to the correct category. And that's it. So we've completed step 1 of our rollover procedure. So there are 3 short steps to go. We've successfully moved our legacy courses to an archived folder out of the top level category structure and buried a bit further down in the Moodle course structure. It is possible to use the command line tool to do these tasks. So you can do these from a terminal prompt if you wish. And you can also use this prompt if you're not familiar with these command line tools. You can use this prompt to automatically pick up a CSV file from a directory and process this. So perhaps your student information system can automatically export a pre-formatted CSV file, and perhaps you could set a scheduled task for Moodle to pick this up and process this to stop those manual steps that we've seen previous. But for now, I'll continue doing this from the browser instance just to keep things simple. So now we'll move on to step 2, which is suspending the current users on our legacy or archived courses. For this, we're going to create a user CSV file, and we're going to upload this CSV file to site administration, users, accounts, upload users. I only need 3 fields on the CSV file to do this. One is the username, so I can correctly identify the user on the course. The next field is the course that I'm suspending that user on. So in this instance, it's only the one course, so it's course 1. And then I set the enroll status for that course 1 to 1. If I still need students to access the course and they still need to access the archived course, then I can set the enroll status to 0, which means they'll still have access to the course and they will see it from their My Moodle page. Again, after you've uploaded this file, you'll get some settings. So these are the options that you need to set this to. The upload type is just set to upload existing users only, because we don't want to change any users that are not in our CSV file. And we're going to edit these user details with the details on the file. So edit user details, we set to override with file. Again, for further help and information how to do this and how to upload users, the web link is at the bottom of the screen in the Moodle Docs area. After you've uploaded your users, you'll see the confirmation, but you'll also see that it says the users updated are set to 0, although there are 0 errors. And at this stage, you may feel like your CSV file hasn't done anything. And the reason it shows that no users have been updated is because we've not actually edited any user information. We've not changed any usernames or passwords. We've just changed their enrollment status. So a quick check to see if you've got the desired outcome is to just drop into a course where you know you've changed that status, and then you'll see under enrolled users, the enrollment methods at the bottom right on the screen are slightly grayed out, and this shows you that they are set to inactive on this course. So that's it. That's step 2 completed. So we're now 50% of the way there on this rollover. So you've successfully archived your courses and your user accounts. So you've kept all the assignments, all the quiz results, all the gradebook entries, everything we need to keep to go back for what we call legacy access is all still on your existing Moodle site. And so now it's time to create our new courses for the new term, which will be step 3. So when we create new courses on Moodle, tutors will not thank you for creating an empty course after they've spent the previous year building up courses full of resources. So we use something called template codes, and template codes allow us to pull the existing content, but not the user information from previous courses. And I'll explain how this is done. So we're going to go back to creating a course CSV file in the same way we did in stage 1. We start with a short name of the course. Notice there's no 2015 on the end of this one because we want to keep the same names and the same structure as what we were running, what our students and our tutors are already familiar with. The category path this time is at the top level. So the category path for algebra is just maths. It's not in a subfolder. And notice the template course is the short name of the courses we archive in step 1. So Algebra 2015 or Statistics 2015. And what this means is when we create those courses, that new algebra course, it will go and fetch all the resources from Algebra 2015 and it will import them into our new algebra course. So we're not faced with an empty course at the start of term. Once you've created this simple CSV file, simply go to Site Administration, Courses, and Upload Courses. And again, you'll see the screens that you're now familiar with. After the preview, you'll see some import options. For the upload mode, I've set this to create new courses only because I'm only interested in creating fresh new courses for the new term. You don't have to change anything else on the screen because we're not editing anything, we're simply creating new courses. Again, if CSVs and this method of working with Moodle is new to you, then the URL at the bottom of the screen provides much more detailed information on the various options that are available to you. After you process that request, you will see a summary that's returned to you. It'll show you which courses you've created. And if we look at the status column on the right-hand side, it will say the course has been created and also course restored. And the course restored refers to the pulling of those resources into the new courses. So that takes us to the end of step 3. So congratulations if you're still with us at this stage. You've successfully created your new courses with pre-populated template courses. So now we're down to the 4th and final step in the course rollover process. And this is step 4. So all that's left now is to enroll our new users, our new intake of students onto the new courses for the start of the new term. And the good news here is that you can continue to do the same enrollments that you do already. So if you're using manual enrollments, you can continue in this method. If you're using self-enrollment, you can continue to use that. If you're already using CSV files, great, or maybe you've got some external database enrollments already. So whichever method you're currently using to enroll your users, you can continue in that same vein, or if you're not, this is a perfect opportunity to look at new ways of enrolling users. So if you're currently manually enrolling users and now you're interested in CSV files, then it provides a perfect opportunity for you to explore the use of CSV files. Again, the link to Moodle Docs down at the bottom of the screen, which gives you more information on how to upload users. So let's review these 4 steps, but that's all there is to the process. So step 1, we archived our legacy courses. So we identified which courses we needed to move into archive folders, into folders we already had created on Moodle. Then step 2, we identified which users we are going to suspend on each of those courses, and also at this stage, which users still may need access to those courses. So if you do have a student moving on to next year's courses, and they still need access to, say, some assignments or some resources, then change that and leave the enrollment status at 0. Don't suspend them by setting it to 1. Step 3 is then creating the new courses and also restoring the content from the courses that we've archived in step 1. And finally, step 4 is enrolling new users onto new courses. So they're the 4 steps that's involved, and it's not that challenging at all. So what are the pitfalls? What are the dangers? What things do we need to look out for when we are using this form of rollover? The success of this project is dependent on the quality of your data, and I can't stress this enough. You're only as good as the data that you have got. So the more data you can extract from your student record systems, the easier this project is. Course categories have to be created beforehand, because if they're not, then this doesn't work, which is something to bear in mind. And it's still a large undertaking. It's still a big job. You know, this doesn't make the job any simpler to identify the courses. It just streamlines the administration. It saves you hours and hours of time manually creating courses, backing up courses, retaining legacy access, etc. So the Moodle part of this is relatively easy. It is just the 4 steps. It's getting the course data that is difficult. And the smaller the organization, the easier this is. or perhaps in a larger organization, it pays to be friends with people in the MIS departments. So here's some tips and some tricks based on experiences, things you can take on board. If you are going to consider this method, then consider tackling this in smaller stages. So rather than trying to do a huge Moodle rollover procedure in one go, why not break this down into smaller departments or categories and then create a checklist and work through department at a time. It's possible that you can plan this out first, you can map out this process. It doesn't have to be done in one fell swoop. There isn't a cut-off point or a certain time when we need to perform this action. If you can, then try and pull all the data from a central source. And as is the nature in further education, for example, in the UK, sometimes we're not sure which courses will be running and when, and certainly which students will be on certain courses. And often in the start of the term, in higher education as well, students may change course. So it's really good to have a more flexible approach to this and be much more responsive to change. And CSV files do allow us to be much more responsive when it comes to enrollments. It always helps to bribe people with biscuits. So if you do need to make friends, then make friends with your IT teams and your MIS data teams. I've often found that biscuits works well for this. The more biscuits you give them, they're a bit more forthcoming out with that information. Again, plan this in advance. Work closely with your teams. There is a joke to this slide, but work closely with your teams. Give the MIS teams and the IT teams warning that this is going to happen. Share the procedure, share the processes, share these slides, so everybody's aware of the steps that are involved and the information that we all need to pull to get this done. Some last-minute guidelines. If your Moodle site matches MIS data, i.e. you're using course codes and short names that reflect the course codes and short names in your student record system, this is made so much easier. If you can, try and do all of the heavy lifting in the student record system and export as a CSV file. It is possible for you to open up CSV files, spreadsheet files, and edit them and change the titles and the fields in the file. But with large files with several thousand entries, this can become quite a laborious task, and it's quite easy to make mistakes. If you can do that in the scripting part from MIS, then fantastic. If you don't have the staff that will do that, or you're unable to do that, then you can do some manual hacking of these CSV files if you need to. And at all times, try and flowchart your procedure. Try and find a system that works for you. Also, by practicing this with one department, it gives you an indication of how long this is going to take should you repeat this and scale this out college-wide. So there is room for improvement. It would be really nice if uploading CSV files allowed us to replace the role of the student or the teacher. Unfortunately, when you upload a CSV file with a new role, it will append that to the role that's already in there. So if you, for example, change a teacher to a non-editing teacher, they will still have teacher until you manually remove that. It would also be great if we could have automatic category creation from the CSV files, as it would also cut down on the administration. All things which may or may not appear in Moodle in the future. We'll try and get those in the Moodle tracker if we can get enough people involved and much more people wanting these improvements. So before we close this session, we're going to just talk very, very briefly about storage space. So by keeping current courses on Moodle and spinning new instances of those courses, it's a misconception that this will take up more and more storage space. Due to the way that Moodle files are stored, it's not creating new instances of those files. So the actual Moodle site itself isn't growing. However, it will grow in terms of the backups. So your archive courses will obviously be part of that course backup procedure in Moodle, but you won't be creating and storing multiple versions of the files. Whereas if you decide to archive Moodle and create a new instance of Moodle, then you're in fact doubling the storage that you need. So for example, if Moodle 1 is 100 gigabytes, then in year 2, Moodle grows to 200 gigabytes, and then you spin a third Moodle, we've already got 300 gigabytes worth of storage on legacy Moodles. So by adopting this method, you actually reduce the storage space required. It reduces the cost because there's less need for servers, there's less maintenance, there's less risk, there's less likelihood of people switching servers off, etc. as well. There's nothing worse than having to restore a Moodle course, as you all know, to just find one file or one grade, particularly if those courses are zipped up, or you need to spin up a new instance of Moodle just to restore a single course. So by keeping things on one system, you do reduce that administration burden should that anybody need access to legacy information. So we're about the half-hour mark now, so it's bringing up to the final close of the session. So before I leave, there are some useful links. So the wonderful Gavin Henrik has a fantastic blog post on this, where he really looks at the pros and cons of each strategy, each approach to Moodle backup. So I urge you to take a look at that blog post, and also it was that blog post that influenced the docs on Moodle.org for year-end procedures. What would be fantastic now, if anybody wants to, via Twitter or in the chat, if anybody wanted to share their own experiences of things they do, then we can then feed this back to Moodle HQ, and we can improve those docs. We can share that best practice and really see what other people are doing for their end-of-year rollover procedures. So that brings us to the end of the webinar. Dead on the half-hour mark. So if there are any questions, I can field those now. Just taking a quick look on Twitter, but I can't see any questions that anybody's got. But we can continue this discussion over Twitter. The hashtag is Moodle Rollovers. So if anybody's interested, I'd be interested to hear what you guys are doing. You know, if there's anything you want to bounce off me, feel free to ping me. I'll certainly answer and get some conversations going. And I'm very interested to see what everybody else is doing with Moodle rollovers, particularly as we're coming up to that time of year where the summer's looming, and this is something that all Moodle admins have to face every year. I hope this has been of benefit for you. I hope it's given you some insight. The slides are on SlideShare, so feel free to take them and reuse them. And this YouTube video has been recorded and will be placed on my YouTube channel. So thanks very much. Thank you.